Hey guys, what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about PC gaming in relation to console gaming. Um, it's often debated, a lot of people, there's fanboys of both sides. Some people, they're crazy about consoles. Some people, live by PCs. And I'm a PC gamer, and I'm not a fanboy by any means. I do own several consoles, but I just want to highlight some points. In my opinion, it may not be correct, but in my opinion, some points that make PC just better in terms of a platform in general. So I got some points written down. I like to start. There's a few misconceptions I find in the community, in the gaming community that is, just about computers. So, for example, one I find a lot when I talk to people about computer gaming is the price of computers. People think, gaming computer's going to cost several $1,000s, has to have, 4 graphics cards, water cooling, blah blah blah. And that's really, it's just, false. It's stupid. You can build a computer that can play any game for, $600, depending where you live. And if you have a computer, just a normal computer that you bought from a shop, you can, buy a cheap graphics card and a power supply for, $200, and be playing any game you want on, pretty good graphics. So I think that's kind of stupid when you think about how much the consoles come out for when they're launched. It's actually ends up being cheaper to buy a computer. Yeah, as they get older, the consoles drop in price, but so does the computer hardware at the time of the console being launched. You can't. I think some people are saying it's more expensive, but when they're not thinking about it properly, because when the console's launched, it might have a $400 graphics card equivalent worth of graphics. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Its graphics power is equivalent to like a $400 computer graphics card, right? But 3 or 4 years down the line, you might be able to get that power for $100. But people are still saying you need the $400 on the computer graphics card, which is wrong. You only need $100 because the console hasn't changed, right? And that brings us to the other point, that a lot of people think that computers go out of date really fast, and that's completely wrong as well. Not only is it easy to actually, or you can upgrade, but even with the same parts, like a PlayStation 3 for example, right? It has it's about 4 years old now, the graphics card in it, right? It's a computer graphics card. They use that and the cell processor together, but that graphics card would cost hardly anything now. If they're still selling it, it'd be like $30-40. So you can't say, oh, you need a $300 or $400 graphics card now, because you don't. The graphics card, or the power equivalent to price, is nothing near what it was when it came out, when the PS3 came out. Yeah, it was $400 when it came out, but PS3 is old now, and you don't need $400 to get the same sort of graphics from a computer. And yeah, computers don't go out of date that fast, and seeing as gaming on computers is predominantly graphics based, even if your processor is a little bit older, or you got an older RAM, older hard drive, as long as your graphics card is like reasonable, then you're fine. Okay, maybe if you want to run games on 3 screens, highest resolution, then no, but just for general gaming, you're gonna get better results pretty cheap, and it'll last a long time. And one point that a lot of people have as well is that computers are kind of a hassle. You got drivers, updates, whatnot, and I think that might be it's a matter of opinion again. I know some people are really computer illiterate and they'll have a problem. I mean, even if it's just getting a game off Steam, like it's the easiest thing in the world, and they'll still stuff it up somehow. But I think for most people, it's not really a problem at all. It's pretty simple. Like, you get your graphics cards come with software now, so whenever you need to update, it'll update itself. When you buy a game, you press install. Pretty much that's it. You don't have to, go through some strenuous process, and yeah, you're up and gaming basically. Yeah, it's not as simple as just throwing a CD in, but it's not that much harder. Like, it's not a huge problem unless you're really struggling to use computers. So, some bad things about the consoles that, in my opinion, make it really, like, worse. So one of my main problems with it is you can't really upgrade them. Yeah, you can't really change anything. And that also comes to, if a part breaks, they're a lot harder to repair, because you can't really go, it's harder to go to a store and get a PlayStation or an Xbox or a Nintendo fix than it is just, go to a computer store, get a new RAM or put a new hard drive in if something happens. So that's one point, and I think that really makes me not like consoles, the fact that you can't really upgrade them, and the distance between launches of consoles is so far apart. I mean, look at PS2 to PS3, for example. There's quite a lot of years there. What is about what, 7 years, 6-7 years between the two. I mean, in 7 years, the computer power, if you it's like tripled, quadrupled. So, at the end of, say in 2006, you had computer games that look much better than any PS2 game, just because, not that the PS2 is bad, it's just that the PS2 is 6 years old, and you can't expect a piece of hardware that's 6 years old to, compete with a modern day computer. It's just not going to happen. And people have that false expectation, which I find is really annoying. There's actually a video, I forget who posted it, but I'll link it in the annotations, about how console gamers are complaining with Battlefield 3, how the graphics don't look as good as computer, and you can only have 24 players, I think it is, rather than 64. And I'm just like, people don't realize that the consoles, like an Xbox 360, has been out for what, 3 or 4 years now, same as the PS3. You can't expect it to run the same as a computer, and they're complaining that the graphics don't look as good. Well, if you had a 4-year-old computer, right, yeah, you're probably going to have to run on low graphics, because it's a game that's pretty hard to run. But people with the old computer understand that it's old, and they don't bitch and moan about it. But people with consoles think, oh, I've got a console, I can play every game on max whenever it comes out. And not saying that everyone thinks that, but there's this general consensus in the community that people don't understand the hardware in the consoles, and they think they have super consoles, super computers or something that can run everything, and it's obviously stupid, because pretty much all the consoles are based off computer hardware anyway. Some of the things I don't like, connecting to the internet, that's been a problem for me a lot. I've got a PlayStation 3 and I've had so much trouble connecting that to the internet. It constantly drops out on Wi-Fi. I don't know if it's a Wi-Fi receiver or what, but like, I've got laptops or whatever right next to where my PlayStation is, and they'll get Wi-Fi fine. PS3, won't get connection, then it does connect, it drops out, and it's just really annoying me. I'm sure if I put a cable in, it'd be alright, but it is just a bit of an issue. Some people have that issue connecting to the internet. Games tend to be more expensive as well for consoles, and that's largely due to there isn't, you don't have as many online retailers. Like, you don't have like things like Steam, where you get really, really cheap deals. And I know Steam now has got on the PSN network, I believe, but I'm talking about, over the history of consoles as well. Look at like PS2, PS3, Xbox, the original one. Like, yeah, you didn't have that choice, and that meant that you paid a lot for games. And yeah, from what I've seen, consoles pretty much always been more expensive. Even in older games, they've just always been more expensive for the games, which is it just adds to the cost of owning one as well. What else is there? Oh, there's a few things where, like, you can't do as much modifications to games and say emulators as well. Like, for instance, I like playing Nintendo 64, PS2, whatever on my computer, and you know, you can't really, because it's all locked down, you can't really do that on a PlayStation or an Xbox. So that's one point where I really like having a computer, because you can do those things, and you don't even need a powerful computer to, you know, emulate PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1 or Nintendo, anything. It's not really, you can't do current gen consoles, but yeah, you can still, you know, have a lot of fun with it, and it's not hard to do. What else is that? I've got a list written down. Oh, and obviously with a console you can't really do that much outside of playing games. Yeah, the consoles now have web browsing. Like, you know, you can watch movies, listen to music, but you're still limited by the fact that it's a console. Like, and that's another point where I think it's unfair people comparing prices. If you can't, like, you can to an extent, but it's not fair to say, oh, my PlayStation or whatever costs $500, your computer costs $1,000, mine is, you know, half the cost. Well, yeah, okay, it's half the cost for gaming maybe, but I mean, it's still, a gaming computer does everything a normal computer does, probably does it better than what a normal computer does. So you can't take that out of the equation, because that obviously adds to the value massively. I mean, everyone basically that has a gaming console probably has a computer, because I mean, well, if you're watching this video, you're probably watching it on a computer. So yeah, it's not like you can't use a computer for other things besides gaming. So I think, yeah, that kind of makes it unfair to people that try to compare the two in terms of price. And there's a few small things I don't like. Like, you can't really customize as much. I mean, you can to some extent with consoles, but not as much. Like, I like having custom, you know, keyboard, mouse pad, headphones. I mean, you can do controllers, but not really. I mean, they're all fairly similar. It's not like the difference between having like a crappy rubber keyboard and a mechanical keyboard. You know, that's a big difference. Getting a new controller might, you know, might feel a bit different, but it's predominantly the same. I mean, that's a small thing. Some people are fine using, you know, standard keyboard and mouse, and they're fine using a standard controller, and I mean, that's fine as well. Just something I don't like. And the fact that you do use controllers limits what games you can play on consoles as well. And things like, you can't really play real-time strategies on consoles, because you really do need a keyboard. Basically any game where you need a lot of buttons, or you need a lot of buttons pressed really fast, or you need very good cursor control. So an RTS basically fits all of those categories. It's really hard to use a controller for it, especially to play fast, and so that kind of cuts down on what developers can actually make for the consoles. And I mean, there's some good points about consoles as well. Like, they do have some good exclusive titles. Like, I personally like Gran Turismo a lot, and obviously I can't play that on computer, so that's, you know, one of the reasons why I have a PlayStation, because it's an exclusive title. And I understand, you know, some people love a certain game or a certain series and they want to play, you know, the rest of them. So some other things are, consoles generally use less power, so, you know, if you're conscious of your power, then consoles do use less, generally speaking. They're also smaller, so, you know, it's easier to put one in your living room, for example, or in a bedroom. And split screen multiplayer as well. That's definitely a big one that I think is really good with consoles. The fact that you actually can, you know, verse your mates next to you with relative ease, rather than having to have, you know, two computers or whatever. I think that's definitely a very good point for consoles. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up the video. I'd like, you know, leave comments, subscribe, all of that. I'm not going to disable the comments or anything, so I don't mind if there's arguments, as long as they're not too unfriendly, and I'll, you know, if there's anything interesting, I'll chime in and give my views on that as well. But yeah, any questions, just leave comments. I think that's about it. Yeah, well, thanks for tuning in.